I'm going to ask the people who are being presented for confirmation reception and for reaffirmation to quietly leave this room, and we'll do a little walkthrough. And what we're really going to do is we're going to figure out how we're going to do the confirmation service and see how quickly he can adjust. Because we actually haven't talked over this issue yet. And so it's going to be just one of our interesting little moments to just test this thing out, see if it's going to work. I've actually
trial run yesterday.
We had a little bit of a trial run. This is the first congregation. Pat's made, I think this is your third formal visitation as bishop. And this is his first congregation to visit where there are confirmations. And so as I was, and we actually did one yesterday. We did it, it's absolutely inappropriate. Because reaffirmation, confirmation, reception, these rites are intended by definition to be public rites for the congregation to participate as the bishop lays hands and does those things. So it's absolutely wrong to do one privately for that reason. But one of the people who was scheduled to be presented, who was here last week, fit as a fiddle, relatively, was Prudence Sousa. And she fell, a devastating fall. She smashed her shoulder so badly that she had to have shoulder replacement surgery done. And there are reasons which are hers, but for her, it seemed to me that the time was more important than the public right, and that was a judgment call I made, and the bishop hasn't second-guessed me on that yet. So we went, he and I, to the hospital yesterday, and there, with the three of us together, she did a reaffirmation of her baptismal vows. So she's the very first. So everybody else, you just second, But I'm absolutely confident that he'll be nimble enough to adjust to whatever curves we throw at him this morning. So that's no worry. So it's my pleasure to welcome our new bishop, Pat Bell, the 8th bishop of the Diocese of Eastern Oregon, with us today. I have party favors for you. These are actually the ones I had set aside for you specifically because these feature you and Tina Marie, I think, and others. These lovely photos that Todd Carey took and posted from the ordination service. And then there are several others, and you're certainly welcome to pick from them. Here, they may not be as likely to have a place on your permanent display shelves as I think some of these will, but they're all lovely. Anyhow, we have these photographs for you to enjoy.
Thank you so much. Yeah. As long as it's not a pointy hat, I'm happy.
Some of us are frankly a little disappointed you don't have the pointy hat. So, just saying, we got time to work with you on that.
Sure do.
I didn't sense a lot of wiggle room on that, but we'll work on it. So without further ado, you're invited to bring questions. I don't know what opening comments you might want to offer, but for my part, I would be interested in hearing, but we'll let you say what you're going to say and let other people ask their questions. But your early impressions, and you haven't even been to the bishop's school yet. So you haven't been told what bishops do yet by other bishops. So you won't necessarily have a lot of that, but you'll begin to get some impressions about what it means to be a bishop, and we'll look forward to learning with you about that. So, Pat Bell.
Thank you so much. Well, good morning. Well, it really is my intent, and I apologize. Obviously, we're running late because I ran late, I guess. Yeah, I know. I thought I had it down, but I get to be bishop after all. Nobody else wants to listen, so I have a captive audience. So thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing time. It really is my intent and hope to have time in this first go-around, especially, to just listen. And I realize a lot of people want to hear from me, but I think in some ways it's far more important that I listen to you. So as much as we can, I'd love to entertain any questions or any comments. What I'd love to hear in some ways is more the dream and the passion that you have, not only around your work together in this congregation, but certainly for the diocese, for our common life together. And I'll be happy to, in the midst of that, share some comments, obviously, to your questions possibly, but a lot of it I want to hear. And then I do want to mark out that I really want to invite Patty to share some comments about Ascension School and what's going on, and she's come to be just available, and primarily I think in gratitude to all of you and the tremendous work that many of you are doing in support of young people being able to attend our gift to the world of Ascension School. So I want to make sure that I give her time as well. So with that, just an opportunity to see if you have any questions, comments that you would like to ask out of the cup. Please.
Well, hi, Pete Weber. One of the dreams that I have for this diocese is that we are all together as a diocese. It's so widespread, and places in Cove and all over that I personally don't know very many of those churches or the people, although I've gone to things. I would like to see us bring the diocese more together, realizing that we do have philosophical differences between parishes, but bring it all together and make it more wondrous. And I'd love to just see that. I don't know how you do that, but we felt kind of isolated here, and well, just because we're over here, along with Redmond and Sisters, and we're all stuck over here against the mountains, and the rest of it is out there.
I appreciate that. And do you mind if I quote you saying that? Because what happens is that, and again, knowing this diocese is, one of my advantages of coming in and you're calling me is that I have a deep awareness for the most part. Obviously, as we talked, a lot of things have changed since I've been here. And a lot of life has been lived in many ways, as you well know. And probably you here at Trinity know that doubly, frankly, from other dioceses, you have really gone through some times of great strain and learning and pressed in many ways, both from the diocese and from your own presence here with leadership. But what's fascinating is you will normally hear your very comment of feeling isolated from the very corners of the diocese. So to hear it from you saying that, frankly, gives me great hope, because what it says is that you are feeling the same thing others are longing for, which is to be a part of one. And that's certainly, as I think, if the clergy actually were listening to anything I said this week as we gathered together, it's one of the themes that I've been trying and want to put forward and to engender. Particularly, that's one of the reasons for the clergy collegiums and revisiting that and bringing clergy back together. And I realized when we were visiting during the search process, and Arlene particularly pointed out to me when I was talking about having collegium, she said, which shows I'm listening, Arlene says, well, I don't want to it can't just be clergy, it has to be everybody. But we start in some ways with those very people who help to bridge that unity and bringing people together, but we'll be doing other things as well.
Well, on that same line, we're an aging body, all of us really.
I don't know.
And,
for yourself.
and as we age, there's a number of us who find it almost impossible to drive all the way to Cove and spend the time that's needed to be part of what goes on. And as lovely as that is, I used to go all the time, and now
I know, I miss seeing you.
once you get there, it's wonderful. But as we age, we need to be closer to home. You know, it's fine for the churches that's an hour and a half to get there, and it's I don't know how anybody from Klamath Falls ever gets there. But so, is it possible to have things that go around the diocese so that people have the opportunity to attend without having to drive for 6 hours?
And the answer, of course, is that yes, and we need to find those ways to do that. Part of the struggle, I think, and the challenge for us is, at the one hand, my joke, particularly up in where I live, is to remind people that when it comes to Eastern Oregon, there's no place that's close. And the point of that is, I don't care where you go in this diocese, you have a little advantage in this Central Oregon piece. You're a little closer, but the fact is, frankly, And that's what makes this a struggle. How do we engender this kind of oneness and strength together with the scarcity of people being in any place that we can bring that together easily. So we've got to find ways that we can move what we're doing around and be able to bring people. And so I think that's just one of those issues that we're going to face. And to be honest with you, while I know that, I think I even suggested, I know that Jed and Churchill probably said the same things as we walked with you into this discernment process, is that we can utilize some of those other gifts that we have that certainly we didn't have 10, 20, 30 years ago, which is to use some medias to join together. But I have to be honest with you, while those might help to function in between, the fact is there's nothing like being here together. And I have to be honest with you, I've got to look you in the face. I want to see your eyes, and I want to see your expressions. I want to see whether or not we're communicating or if you're listening, and I want you to see mine, except when I make those, bad faces. But I think having that physical presence with each other and finding the ways to do it, we've got to do that, and we will certainly be giving attention to that.
Well, I noticed when either our diocesan bishop comes or the Right Reverend Michael Curry came, we light up like a fire. And well, it's true. We feel so excited to have you here, and we just wish it were more often. He said, what can we do to get me back here? And I said, let me think. And he might come out on vacation. If I can work out anybody have a house for him? He loves it here, and he loves the spirit. It was exciting when he was here.
It is, and that's to take away nothing from all of you and your leadership, and certainly Jed. I mean, if you can't get alive with Jed, you're dead. Anybody who can photobomb the presiding bishop. And I think, I wonder if some of that isn't the very fact that when we do that, somehow it tends to draw us. And that is largely, traditionally, what the bishop's role is to bring, in a sense, a sign and symbol of unity. And that's really largely my role in many ways, is to both to represent and then to facilitate the ways in which we become the church. My vision for the Diocese of Eastern Oregon, amongst many, I suppose, but my largest vision is that we might get to the place, in line with your question, where we recognize that we are one church, meeting in a variety of places. And that obviously is, very much back to the initial place where the church started. Of course, the church began in each community, and each community essentially had the bishop. The bishop was there with that community, and as we grew and expanded and enlarged, we became this administrative giant kind of thing that didn't necessarily speak to that. And my hope is that somehow we find that we break down those barriers enough to realize that we are in this together. There is no them and us. It is always, not just exits, but I love you. We have 5 entrances, which is a wonderful image about the church, isn't it? We should have far more ways to get in than to get out. Anyway, but that may be a whole other. Any other questions on that? Comments that you want to maybe make to any of that? Yes.
I had a question of information about the size of diocese here. I thought it's fairly large, not as large as the Diocese of Alaska, but and by the way, one of the bishops was a pilot there, and he could get around. But I'm not suggesting that you take flying lessons. How big is our diocese compared to others, as far as square footage or square mileage?
Well, I would suspect that, frankly, we don't have necessarily, although we feel like it's large, and it certainly is. There are many other dioceses equal to ours, and some obviously, as you say, larger. But I think our distinction is that we have so very few congregations in that mix, and essentially so very few Episcopalians in that area compared to other places. So that the sense and the feel for us is that it is so diverse and so spread out and so disconnected in many ways that there are so many other dioceses that probably have equal to or close to our space, but you just don't have to go as far between who we are and where we are. And consequently, they can organize in a much different way. One thing I will share with you, and it kind of comes along the issue of unity, is that I know that probably under Bishop Gregg's time, there was a move, and I think even some of you were participating at the Diocesan Council, or the Diocesan Convention, to create the idea of trying to bring some of that unity by developing the convocations and drawing those lines to try to identify what congregations are closest to each other, and therefore, by that designation, to encourage some kind of actual activity together. And from what I understand, which is normal, I mean, this is not unusual in a lot of dioceses, the very act of trying to rearrange that and hope that something organic takes place out of it, it ends up it didn't. And so we're going to remove those lines again, at least my intent is to remove those lines and work at some other ways in which we build that commonality. And some of that may be around the fact that we come around the diocese, you know, we do more things together and draw each other together. And the problem with that in some places is there's a very low critical mass to the numbers of people. I mean, that might work in Central Oregon right here. We can draw from several congregations somewhat easily, although we were talking last night, some people think it's a huge distance from Redmond to Bend. And, you know, it's amazing to us. There are people, when I was down in Ontario, it seemed like it was a huge distance from Ontario to Fruitland because it was across the river. A mile, but it was across the river. So we've got to be able to talk to each other about how we do some of that. But it's my hope that I think we would learn so much from each other. And I'm so thrilled that you're inviting that. Because there is a sense, and I'll be quite honest, if you don't know this, you should know this. It's just like what I experienced being in the Coeur d'Alene Church, which is right next to Spokane. And the rest of the diocese has this attitude about Spokane, and I didn't realize we got lumped into that. So it's kind of like, it's those Spokane people. You, unfortunately, are the largest community, the largest, in many ways, the largest active Episcopal, totally Episcopal congregation in the diocese, and therefore there are a lot of people that think, oh, those Bend people. And we need to break that down. And quite frankly, I want to invite you to help me break that down by the very attitude that we want to be, we feel disconnected from other people and we want to be connected, that we're in this together. You don't have anything over those very few people who are meeting in Bonanza anymore. And I don't know if Bonanza is going to survive. I suspect that probably it is not. But those people are precious and should be precious to all of us. And we're connected to them. We should be supporting what happens there, just as they should be supporting you, and not feel that there's any kind of a divide by position or status or whatever the divisions are. That was my speech. Any other questions or comments that would be helpful?
You can tell the people that if they think from Redmond to here is awfully far away. I met a couple at Costco one day when I was having a pizza, and they were there having their big hot dog, and I was talking to them, and they drive every day from Redmond to Bend to have their hot dog. Every day. And I mean, I couldn't believe it. And they said, well, we're retired and there's not much to do, and it gives us something we love to watch people. So I thought, and
So
they
you
have
never
a
know
hot
what
dog
drives
every day.
draws.
So tell them it isn't so far after all.
That's right.
Well, there's even more difference between Sisters, Tumalo, Eastside Bend. We need better internet connections between communities so we can talk to people in Sisters and Prineville. Our internet connectivity needs dramatic improvement.
Well, any other questions, comments? Yes.
There are some churches that have joined with either a Lutheran church. Or, is there much happening in that around the diocese?
There
I mean,
is.
more of that going. Do you expect that to continue happening?
I would hope it actually
Yeah.
continues. We have a significant number compared to the number of congregations we have. We actually do. And probably very vital and active, and some working in better ways than others. I mean, there is a much difference between what's happening, for example, in the dynamic nature of Sun River compared to maybe what we're trying to do in a couple of other places that have been almost maybe drawn into it by necessity. But I would love for us to explore, and I think many people are talking, certainly the clergy are talking this way, of exploring those ways in which we find vital energy together and doing it not because it's going to be necessary for survival purposes, but because it's the right thing to do. And I think we'll find that going on more and more. Okay. I want to take a minute before we have to have some of you leave and invite Patty, and then we'll come back to any questions and maybe might share with you a little more. But I want to invite Patty to come and just share a little bit about Ascension School. Patty is our executive director of Ascension and has been for a good number of years and brings a lot of authority. Patty and I have known each other for a lot of years. She was in youth group at Ontario when I served there, and then our paths have come together on a variety of places, almost always up through Ascension, but it's really a thrill for me to be able to working with Patty, so welcome, Patty.
I'm going to stand behind this little lectern because I feel a little bit more comfortable that way. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always a treat to come to Bend and spend time with you all. My husband and I lived here for 6 years, from 2000 to 2006, and we got married here, and we had our 2 children here. And then life called us away to northeastern Oregon. I always distinguish northeastern Oregon is a little bit different than eastern Oregon, where I grew up in Ontario, as Pat was saying. So it took us away from here, but I love so much coming back, and it's so beautiful, and you guys are a wonderful congregation, and I'm fortunate to have Terry Ramsdorf, who continues to help, hi Terry over there, help get me here. He's always very proactive in inviting me to come, so thank you, Terry. A lot of times when I come, I start out by promoting all of the programs at Ascension School and what's available, but I thought I would do it a little bit different today. All of the brochures and materials about what we are offering this year are over here on this side table, so you can see what is happening at Ascension School this summer. But what I wanted to talk to you about today was summer camp programs and why they are so important in the Episcopal Church, why they are essential. I feel like they are a place where the seed is planted, that you might have an experience at camp where you've maybe encountered God. Maybe you're a young person and you're not really sure what has happened or what's happening, but because you had that experience at summer camp, at some point in your life, you're going to remember that, and it's going to bring you back to your faith. It certainly was my experience, and so maybe that's why I feel like the planting of the seed is an important part of what happens at summer camp. So I brought with me some information that I wanted to share with you about some research that was conducted by a gentleman named Jacob Sorensen. He's a Lutheran pastor, and he has been doing recently a research project called the Confirmation Project. And the Confirmation Project seeks to provide Christian leaders with examples of good practices and strategies that are effective in helping young Christians grow as disciples of Jesus Christ. And so Jacob, I had the privilege of seeing him present this research at the Episcopal Camps and Conference Center organization that I am a part of. It's our conference. And this is just a fact for you all. There are 88 Episcopal Camps and Conference Centers across the country that are part of this organization. We have almost all of them incorporated in the organization, but I didn't know that if you all knew that there are that many Episcopal Camps and Conference Centers that are operating across the country. So after Jacob finished his research, he came up with 6 big ideas about camp. Number 1, camp is more than fun and games. And I think for some of you who have participated in summer camp, you know that. Camp is about fellowship, building self-esteem and character, and community building. Number 2, Christian camp experiences lead to greater engagement in focus groups. So kids what they said after they attended camp is that they felt that they had things to offer their community, that they could affect change in the world. And that's really a powerful thing. Camps are effective because they take Christian community seriously. So campers and staff members in the focus groups highlighted the importance of community above all other aspects of the camp experience. The community experience contributed to their sense of self, growth in faith, and the enjoyment of camp. Camps are effective because there are places to unplug. And this isn't just about children, this is about adults too. And this might surprise you, but campers they actually think this is a good thing. And they were able to articulate that when they were at camp, they were able to authentically interact with their peers, which also is a very powerful thing to say at this point in our society, and really speaks to the value of these places that are apart, that are set apart to create a space for people to unplug and to slow down and have peace. Number 5, camps are effective because they take young people seriously. My questions about faith were taken seriously, is what campers said. Campers and staff members in focus groups repeatedly highlighted that camp allows them to be themselves and people take them seriously. Number 6, camps are effective because they take the experience seriously. Campers, staff members, and directors highlighted the importance of being able to live out their faith, not just talk about it. And I think this is really important because millennials, more than ever, that's what they want to do. They want to serve as part of their faith. That is what is connecting them to religious organizations right now. They want the opportunity to serve their communities.
Do people know what millennials are?
No, probably not. The millennials are, help me out, 30 to 20 to 30?
30, yeah.
Somewhere in that.
Yeah, I'm not a millennial.
No.
I'm 42. I'll share that with you. So somewhere in there. And also on the campers' surveys, the learning topic that most strongly correlated to strengthening faith during the camp experience was the experience of encounters with God. So this is happening for young people at camp, at Christian church camps, or Christian summer camps. As I said earlier, that I had the opportunity of seeing Jacob present some of his research, and there's a lot more that came along with this. These were just 6 ideas that he presented as part of the results of his research. But the camp and conference center directors that were at this presentation, we were all so excited and inspired after we heard his research, because we all know that camp is transformational. But what his research did was it spoke to the value of experience, that these kids were having an experience, and that was so profound for kids living in a Christian community that they built together. That's a lot different than what happens to kids who are going to church and having the experience of church in the pews. So what it said, which made us all so proud, was that, let me read what it is so I get it right. Conference and camp ministry does look different than parish ministry, but it isn't less important. And I think that's a battle that camp and conference centers directors feel, is that maybe our ministry is less than. And this person's research was really, really important in helping us get beyond that, to rethink the church. So, and as I said before, summer camps are more important than ever for, and I should say conference centers, for young people and for adults, because there aren't that many opportunities left in our lives to go and be in a place apart and be unplugged and reconnect with God, with nature, with each other. So I wanted to share this information because I wanted to just speak to why camp matters. And I also wanted to to share with you why it's so important that you have contributed to the copy program, the Cove Copy program. All of these things are happening for the young people that you are funding to come to summer camp. And I so appreciate Terry's work, Marie and Dave's work, Jim's work, and Salim's work. And I know that there are many more people that have been a part of this committee and this ministry here that's happening at Trinity. But I want to thank all of you for making the donations that you do and supporting the young people that you do to come to camp. So I have one more thing that I want to say. And I thought this was a story that really paints a true life picture of what is happening for kids who come to camp. And so this is a story about my son. So a few years ago, my son Riley, who is now 13, he asked to attend snowboarding camp. And for me, it was the first sports camp that he had asked to attend. And so as a camp director of a Christian summer camp, it was sort of like, secular sports camp? That's like a bad word in our world because of how things have changed. And summer camps, Christian summer camps, that was it in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And sports camps came along and sort of shifted the kids coming to church camp, going to sports camps. So we joke about that in the camp world. So after a lot of discussion, we decided, yes, this is a good thing. He should go to snowboarding camp. It's something that he absolutely loves, and he will learn more about it. So, and I also felt okay about it because he was, after all, still attending 2 Episcopal church camps that summer. One was Ascension School, and the other Paradise Point in the Diocese of Idaho, which is about 4 hours from where we live. But it was important for me to have my kids have an away-from-home experience. So I was, of course, so eager at the end of the summer to find out what his favorite camp was. And I thought I should try to be subtle about asking this question, but there's really no subtle way to ask the question. So I just said, what was your favorite summer camp? And I knew it wouldn't be Ascension School because that's his backyard. He's there all the time. But I was so praying that it was going to be Paradise Point. And it was. And I said, what was the difference? Why? And he said, well, I don't know, which is a pretty typical answer from my son. So I was persistent because I know that was what I needed to do. And he said, I asked again, and he said, we were just together. And he said, it was that nature thing, Mom. And it makes me get a little emotional. And he said, you know what? Ascension School needs an outdoor chapel. And I said, you're right. I think so too. And then I said, can you tell me what your favorite experience was at summer camp this summer? And he said, yeah, that's easy, Mom. I walked the labyrinth on the rocks above the lake with a full moon. And it gives me goosebumps. And that's all that I could hope for. Sending my child to a Christian summer camp was that he was going to have that moment. He was going to encounter God, and he did. And so that just validates what I do for a living, and I'm proud to say that and honored to get to be the director of Ascension School Camp and Conference Center, a place that's been doing this ministry for over 90 years. And so as a diocese, I think that we are really, really fortunate that we have this incredible ministry. So thank you for supporting this place and the kids that come.
Yes, Barb.
Thank you, Patty, for your obvious passion for this ministry.
You're welcome. I love it.
One thing maybe I'll just say about that, and it does speak back to the unity thing. One of the things that I'm attempting to bring to the diocese and working with 2 absolutely outstanding staff members And I'm gifted with that. And I will tell you, this isn't always the case that happens with dioceses, particularly in transitions, is to be able to step into a situation where a bishop is able to be embraced by administrative staff who not only are competent and passionate, but who are obviously there to support the overall work of the diocese and make my job so much more enjoyable and facilitate what I can do to be a support to you. And so Patty and Lisa are stunning, and one of the things that we're doing working in is to attempt to develop a different kind of atmosphere and environment of the culture of our office to bring all of what we're doing together as one. So we're trying to say, we're going to model to you what the church should look like, which is there's no longer Ascension School over here and whatever the diocese is, which we don't always even know what that is, over here. But to bring both those together, and my work with these two who are my executive administrators, and to model the fact that this is one diocese doing one work, and this is one of our ministries. You're another part of that ministry. We're tied to you being the diocese. You are the diocese. And so we're working with that. Obviously, you're going to have a chance to see that. For those of you who can, come up for a convention, because we will be hosting convention at Ascension this year, and we'll be doing it in our brand new building, which is quickly taking shape. It's up, roof, walls, interior is quickly coming together, and hopefully with the fact that it'll be in use maybe by the end of next month, anyone?
Mm-hmm. Hopefully.
And so it will be well cared for and tended by many young voices and feet during the summer, and then you get to come. And we want Ascension to be a prime ministry. And we're back to the issue. It is a long ways away. I wish I should have brought my iPad. Patty made this absolutely stunning observation the other day that I can't quite quote, but I'm going to start quoting it. And the fact, the basic point of it is that it's often the journey, and in the journey, that we arrive. And that means sometimes that 4-hour drive, or 4.5 or 5-hour drive.
It's 5.5 hours.
Is it 5.5? Well, I was being gentle to the rest of the diocese, but 5.5 to 8 hours away. Sometimes that journey itself is the disconnecting from one to enter into the mystery and wonder of the other. And we have, what part of the vision I have for Ascension, and I don't know if I'll be here long enough to see it into fruition, but I dream of it being a world-class place apart and a way for people to come to, because we've got the environment, we've got the situation, we've got at least a start on the facilities that we need to make that a place where, particularly for adults, and particularly for young adults, but all of you as well, to find a place, a way to enter into that connectedness that we want to engender. So thank you for your support of that. Thank you for your support of youth around this community. And thank you for just being who you are. And I'm sorry we don't have any more time, but we'll let those of you who need to go home enjoy that. Those of you who are entering into the service, we'll see you in there very, very shortly. So blessings and peace, and thank you so very much.
Thank you.